Well, good evening, and thank you for coming here. This is really to tell you about my musical journey. As a composer, I began at a very early age, 6. I am now 86, so I've been doing this for a long time. I am a product of the Syracuse Public Schools and of Syracuse University. Back when life was fairly simple, at the height of the Depression, if you've read your history books, you know it was from the 1930s. All right, my first music lessons were 25 cents a week. 25 cents. It doesn't sound like much now, but back then, in 1938, people didn't make any money every day, every week. So 25 cents was quite a bit. People were lucky if they made $3 a week. I mean, that's, you know. Salaries were either very low or non-existent. I would like to introduce the first people that are here with me. I have my friend James Shultz, my tenor. He's been singing with me for something like 30 years. And my friend Debbie Miller, who's just come back from Fresno Opera Company, where she sang a role in the opera Carmen. So she's going to be singing with us.
All right.
My studies began with the organist Joseph McGrath at the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception in Syracuse, where I earned about $12 a week in 1951. Because I played for 3 masses every day for 3 days a week. I was his substitute. And so I got my $12. And on Sunday, well, I was at university at the time, I sang in the choir at Immaculate Conception. I also sang in temple choir at Adath Yesharon in Syracuse on Friday nights. That's a synagogue, in case you don't know. And there I studied with a very good friend of mine, Abraham Vinus, and sometimes he let me be the organist and he directed, and sometimes I wrote something and he wrote something. So we were like co-composers and co-organists. And I also, in 1983, I was a summer organist in my father's hometown of Sonnino, Italy. I was there for a whole summer, and every Sunday I was the organist for their little church. And it was a nice time. Now, you probably realize that for some parts of any church service, there are moments when the organist fills in with something or other. This is improvisation, all right? It's making music for the moment, not recorded or written down. Just make it up as time allows. And as an organist, this was my gift, and few, if any, use this skill. For example, when you were coming in, that's all I was doing was improvising. And in the Catholic service, it's very important that people feel a sense of the moment. And it's very important to feel that when they're at communion, that it is a very important moment. So you try to make the music fit. You don't do a dance tune, you do something that fits the moment. So something where he's up there. Try to end on the same key where the priest is going to be singing his next words, or where the next hymn is going to be. For example, if the hymn is going to be an A flat, I can't be here, I have to be here. So you've got to know those things ahead of time. So that's what improvisation is. They tell me that Mozart improvised because he was a church organist too. And a lot of his music was never written down because it was just on the moment. None of these things are ever written down. I don't play them. I don't play the same thing twice. I just make it up. That was the gift that was given to me. And I was told, use the gift or you lose it. I had very good teachers. They were very, 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 very important in their community, and they did things. While teaching in the Syracuse public schools, I composed many works. I did music for recitation of a little book by the artist Norman Rockwell and his wife Molly. I have over 300 compositions, all of which have been performed. Some of them have been recorded. I've performed in New York City. I've done the Weill Hall, which is the little Carnegie Hall. I've done the New York City Public Library recitals. I did those for years. And I've had stuff performed in Toronto and Canada, several places in Austria, obviously in Italy because I was there for 6 months, and in Switzerland. I first won a composition prize, how about that, in 1976. Since then I have won a few other contests, got lots of glory and lots of honor, but no money. All of these prizes, I never got anything for them. The big money went to other people, But my real joy was still writing music for the voices. So naturally I chose to write operas, even a children's opera. Unfortunately, opera is the most expensive musical to produce. And I have no money. I still have no money. A group of dedicated friends worked to collect money for me in 2008. We were going to premiere 8 performances of my opera, Molly of the Mohawks, which it did get 8 performances, with an orchestra, a good conductor, and professional singers and union musicians. So the group down in the Mohawk Valley said, oh, we'll collect money for you. It was wonderful. So for 3 or 4 months they contacted me, yeah, we're collecting, we're getting money. 3 nights before the opening show, I got an email that said, hi, we're no longer a part of this, goodbye. That was it, goodbye. I have no idea where these people went. They were supposedly friends of mine. I'd known them for a long time back then. I don't know where they went. I don't know how much money they collected. It doesn't matter. I ended up with nothing from them. I had a savings account with about $25,000 in it. The cost of the opera at that time was about $75,000. Well, I threw my $25,000 at them, and they said, okay, well, maybe you can pay us next year or as soon as you get the money. Well, I didn't really get the money. That was in 2008. And in 2012, a friend of mine from the Mohawk community at Augusta contacted me, and he said, aren't you going to do something more with Molly Brandt? And I said, yeah, you got any money? And he said, well, there's a lady in California. She runs a film company. She wants to do something about Molly Brandt. So I contacted her. Of course, her first idea about Molly Brandt was that Molly Brandt was nothing more than a, well, you know what. But she wasn't. I corrected this woman. I said, you just don't realize Molly Brandt was a leader of her people. She devoted her life to her people and saved them. So anyway, she said, oh, that sounds great. She said, can we help you with any money? And I said, oh, the magic word, money? Somebody's going to say money? I said, you just don't realize how much money you're talking about, lady. I said, this is an opera. It's not just a choir. So she said, well, how about $35,000? I said, you have to give it to the Oriskany Alliance, which is our 501c3. So I contacted our board of directors and Mark Gibo, and I said, look at this offer, Mark. Do you think it's legitimate? And he looked it over and he said, yeah. He said, I think it's legitimate. What you need to do is, he said, get the check. Don't use any of the money, he said, for at least 21 days, because you want to be sure that it's a legitimate check. So 21 days later, it was still good. So I paid off what I owed all those union musicians from 2008. This is 2012, 4 years later. So anyway, they were willing to work again. And we got the opportunity to do a concert version in Toronto for the United Empire Loyalist Association of Canada, which was celebrating its 100th anniversary, which I am now a member of. But how about that? An Italian with native connections is now a member of the United Empire Loyalists. Well, anyway, that's how that goes. So we did the opera there, and at that time, Charles Schneider, who was the conductor of the Utica Symphony, who had done all this other work with me, he was the performer that night. He introduced me to Henry Jelinek. And Henry Jelinek in Czech, which means deer, D-E-E-R, wanted to have somebody write an opera about the story of his family and how they escaped from the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, under the Russians, under the Soviet domination, and came to Canada. A tremendous story. I mean, read like a novel. So Charles and I spent 5 years, and we wrote the music for this new opera. Called it Skaters. It's a fascinating and a very, very big production. We're not at the point yet where we can produce it because this one's going to cost approximately $400,000. So, yeah, I mean, poor little old me who barely makes enough. I barely pay my bills. However, I pay all my bills, but I have no extra money. But I'm doing all these things. I have to explain to you that the reason I do all these things because I was given this gift. And if I don't use this gift, it'll be taken away from me. And I figure I got a few years left in me yet. So I keep going. And I love music. I love doing it. I am an organist. None of the churches I play in, well, yeah, I take that back. I love to play at Brownville because they have this marvelous Allen instrument, and I love to play that thing. And I love to play at the Cape Vincent Catholic Church because they have a casa band. And that is just such a marvelous instrument. And it's a little bit out of tune, it needs a little work, but they're going to work on it. And it's just so wonderful to be able to use this technique. I have to explain to you that there's a big difference in technique in playing a piano as opposed to playing an organ. A lot of pianists can play piano, and they play better than I do, okay? But very few pianists can play organ. It's a different touch, it's a different technique, it's a different skill. It isn't just that you use the pedals. That's not the only thing. There's a lot more to it. The touch is different. So I can't explain it. Some people who hear it understand it, and some people don't. But anyway, okay, that's basically it. And in my travels, in 1983, I almost got stuck behind the Iron Curtain, not to come out of it. I was traveling with a music group, a senior citizens marching band that left Vermont and went to Europe, and we toured for like 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And when we got to Vienna, I got a visa so that I could go over to Budapest because I wanted to see where the composer Bela Bartok had worked. I did not tell anybody in the group that I was doing this. You know, I'm an American. I make stupid mistakes. Tell Americans when you travel, don't assume that you're safe everywhere because let me tell you something, you're not. And you are a target, and you don't realize it. And don't assume that you're right and they're wrong because that isn't how it works. Anyway, I took the bus ride. We got over to Budapest, no problem. Enjoyed myself, fantastic day. I spoke enough German. I conversed with the bus driver all the time. I was the only American on board, no one else. All right. On the way back, I said to him, "Oh, when will we get back to my hotel?" Oh, he said, "We should be there by midnight." He said, "We'll get you there by midnight." I said, "Oh, good." We get to the border, which is the Iron Curtain. Remember, this is still Soviet territory. And between the two borders, there's a no man's land of about 3 miles wide. It's filled with barbed wire and everything else. Anyway, we get to the border, and a guard comes on the bus, who is probably 6 foot tall, and he has a weapon that's almost as big as he is, and in German says, "Everybody out." So we get out of the bus, stand against the wall, and give us your papers. Now, the American Embassy always tells you, never separate yourself from your passport. Well, I got news for you, ladies and gentlemen. This guy had a weapon. I'm not going to argue with him. Here's my passport. We had to stand for almost 2 hours. I think it was an hour and 45 minutes. That's pretty near 2 hours. You couldn't sit down. You couldn't talk. You couldn't ask for a glass of water. There was no way to go to the bathroom. You just had to stand there. And you had to hope you were going to get your papers back and you were going to get on this bus. I don't know where the bus driver was at this point. I mean, they took him into some room and was talking with him. So anyway, they finally come out, and there were 33 people on this bus. I was the last one to get my passport back to get on the bus. I was never so glad to see my passport as I was at that moment. And so I said to the driver, "Boy, we're going to be late." "No," I said, "we got to go yet through another gate." I said, "Really?" We go through the first gate, and in the middle of the no man's land, there's a gate. And there's a man in a tower, and he can pull this rope to bring the gate up, or he can just let the gate stay there. So I said to the bus driver, "How long is this going to take?" He says, "I don't know." So down comes the guy from the tower, talks with the bus driver, and the bus driver gives him a cigarette. And I said, "Oh, good, we're going to go?" He said, "No, I made a mistake." I said, "Oh my God, what mistake did you make?" He said, "I have a pack of cigarettes sitting on the dashboard of the bus, and he saw that. He's going to come back." Then he looks at me, he said, "Do you have any American cigarettes?" I said, "No, I don't smoke." And he said, "Well," he said, "you should always carry American cigarettes," because he said, "they'll buy anything." I said, "Okay, next time I come, I'll remember that." Well, anyway, the guard come back down, and he walks through the bus, and you don't know what he's going to do. I mean, he could say, "Get out of the bus and go with me," but he didn't. And the driver gave him the pack of cigarettes. He goes back in the tower, and he raises the gate. We get back to my hotel at approximately, I can't remember, it was quarter of 5 or quarter of 4, but very, very late. You know, this is 5 hours difference. And so I said, "Well, that's nice. I had a nice day." So I get back in the hotel, and I go upstairs, and I get my stuff, because our bus was leaving to go to the next city where we were touring, was going to leave at 5:30. So I just sat in the coffee shop and waited, and everybody came down. "Oh, did you have a nice sleep?" I said, "Oh yeah, I slept like a rock." I never let on that I had done this, because I really had broken a rule. I had not let the administrator know that I was doing this. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm very, very fortunate to have gotten back, and I'm very grateful to be back. And I want to show you some of the stuff that I have written over the years. And we're starting with some songs. Okay, so we're going to do this. He was a Syracuse University attendant, 1897. He married a madam from New Orleans, and he died at the young age of 30. But he did a lot of things. And he wrote this one, which is "God fashioned the ship of the world." And some of you who have the words, if you can read them, I will read them first, because I think you're hearing music that you've never heard before, and it's very hard to hear words sometimes. So the text for this one is, "God fashioned the ship of the world carefully. With the infinite skill of an all-master made he the hull and the sails. Held he the rudder ready for adjustment. So tall he stood. Then at a fateful time, wrong called. Wrong called, and God turned heedingly. And lo, the ship, at this opportunity, slipped slyly, making cunning, noiseless travel down the waves, so that forever rudderless it went upon the seas, going ridiculous voyages as with serious purpose before stupid winds. And there were many in the sky who laughed at this thing." Mr. Shultz and I.
sorrowfully. With the infinite skill of an all-master, making the hull and the sails. Held he the rudder ready for adjustment, so tall stood he, scanning the world proudly. Then, at a fateful time, wrong called, and God turned heedingly. And lo, the ship at this opportunity slipped away shyly, making cunning noises travel down the ways, so that forever rudderless it went upon the seas, going ridiculous voyages, making plain profess, calling as with serious purpose before stupid winds. And there were many in the sky who laughed at this thing.
Now, the one I neglected to put the words for, Miss Miller will sing, is the one from the opera Molly of the Mohawks. That was, when I wrote the opera Molly of the Mohawks, I wrote the first 4 songs in 4 days because I was so moved by what she did. I had returned from Europe, fortunately, getting through that Iron Curtain. I didn't have to worry about that. So I understood what it was that people feel. She represents a people who are displaced by war. We see this all the time nowadays. It's so ever present on the television, we don't even think anything of it. But to go through that is an entirely different thing. She was the leader of her people, the Mohawks. So when the war is over, she said, "But what of my people? What are you going to do about us?" At that point, she was stuck way over in Fort Niagara and needed to come all the way back here, believe it or not, to Cape Vincent, which is where she came. And she stayed here for 4 years, and then when the treaty was signed, then they all moved to Tyandanega in Canada. But she was the leader, and she wondered, where do we go now that the war is ended? So, yeah.
What of my people?
read them, and the reason I give you the words is because it's difficult enough to listen to a new song and catch the words. If you're listening to the radio, you can maybe record it and hear it 6 or 7 times before you finally catch every word. But this friend of mine, R. Wayne Archer, wrote a lot of marvelous little funny poems that speak so well of animals, etc. Of course, a yak. I've never seen a yak. I know they exist. So that text is, the more I think about the yak, the more I think I'd like my money back. And then the second one, which Miss Miller will sing, is the auk. The time has come for us to talk about the auk. Take care when you pronounce the word describing this distracting bird. It sounds absurd to hear uneducated folks pronouncing it oak, to rhyme with joke. It also comes as quite a shock to hear folks of cultured stock pronounce it ock. The Germans have an awkward way of adding an ow sound to K, so it comes out auk. But don't pronounce awk that way. The word is awk, the way we walk, and this concludes our little talk. So the yak first, and then the awk. Brevity is the soul of it. This is it.
The more I think about the yak, the more I think about the yak, the more I think, the more I think, the more I think about the yak, the more I think I'd like my money back.
This is the porcupine's wedding. So, do-ah, do-ah, do-ah. A porcupine named Oliver, while walking in a wood, met a lass and nuzzled her, as any hedgehog would, or should. He asked her to go home with him, and she said, sure she would. They walked together through the trees. They snuggled quill to quill. He asked if she would stay the night, and she said, sure I will, as any porcupine would do, with an hour or two to kill. And then, when morning lit the sky with red and gold and blue, the hedgehog lassie sought to leave, and told her friend adieu. He said, you cannot go like this, because I'm stuck on you. He said, there's nothing left for us to do. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Okay.
A porcupine named Oliver, while walking in a wood, met a lass and nuzzled her as any hedgehog should. He asked her to go home with him. Do-do-do-da-do.
And she said, sure she would.
They walked together and no trees, they snuggled quill to quill. He asked her if she'd stay the night.
And she said, sure I will, as any porcupine would do. With an hour or two to kill.
And then, when morning lit the sky with red and gold and blue, the hedgehog lassie sought to leave. He said, you cannot go like this, because I'm stuck on you. They pondered their mutual plight and sought some common clue. He said, there's nothing left for us to do. I'll have to marry you. Do you perhaps agree with me?
And she replied,
And now the wooded Apennines are up to hearing porcupines.
Now I'm going to go into the more serious stuff right here. The new opera is called Skaters. We haven't produced it yet because, in case you didn't realize it, operas cost a lot of money to produce. Molly of the Mohawks cost $90,000 the last time we did it. That was awesome. This opera, because it includes at least 9 or 10 lead singers, and it encompasses a good 50 years of history, takes a lot of costuming, singers, and chorus, orchestra. They want to do it with a 38-piece orchestra, which is quite a bit. Anyway, they collected about, they're going to do this in Canada first, because that's what people have done. When they escaped the Czech Czechoslovakia. I keep wanting to call it the Czech Republic. In 1948, it was not the Czech Republic. It was still Czechoslovakia. They came into Canada, and they had 5 children at that point, right? And they were living in Prague, and the father was sent by the Soviet government. He was technically employed by them, even though it was his factory. They told him they were charged of it. He could do what they told him to do. They sent him to Switzerland to purchase material. And his son was the oldest son was in Switzerland studying. And they told him he had to return in 3 days or they would kill his family. He leaves 4 children and his wife still in Prague. So he hires the ambassador from Argentina who spoke Spanish and has Spanish passports. These are people who have Czech as their language. They don't speak Spanish. But the mother tries to teach all the kids, we've got to speak Spanish and we have to say CC and all this stuff. So she trains them to say that, and the ambassador takes them on, and he has the passports with him, and he's going to take the mother and the 4 children across the border into Switzerland to be with the father and the other child. They get as far as the border, and the ambassador says to her, I only have 5 passports, and there's 6 of them. So Henry, who was only 4 years old at the time, they stick him in the trunk of the car, and they get to the border guard, and the guard, they don't read Spanish, they don't even know what this is all about. And he goes into the captain of the guard, and he says, I don't know what it's all about. And he said, I want to inspect the car, and they won't let me. And the border guard says, well, he said, he's an ambassador. It's an ambassador's car. We can look at it a little bit, but, you know. So apparently they don't touch the trunk. And so, but he says to them, how many people are out? No, I'm sorry. The kid is not in the trunk. He's in the back seat. All right. So now there's 5 people sitting there. There are her 4 children and her, plus the ambassador, who was in the guardhouse at this point. So he says to the guard, how many people out there? He says 5, which there were 5 out there, but there's 1 more in the talking to the captain. He said, oh, get them out of here, get out, go. So he lets them cross the border, and they do reunite with the family. When they get to Canada, this is in 1948 they escape. In 1962, the second oldest son, Otto, and his sister, Maria, were skating champions in Canada. I mean, they were on the Olympic team and this and that. So they went to the World Cup in Prague that year in 1962. They were supposed to go in 1961, but that was the year that the American team was killed in a plane crash. So they postponed it to 1962. In any case, they won the championship. And the father and mother are sitting in Switzerland on top of a mountain watching grainy television, which in 1962 wasn't very much. They could not go to Prague because these 2 were, if they entered Prague, they would have been shot because they were escapees. But they saw their son and daughter win the championship, and that's the epitome of it. And the father lived, and mother lived quite a while, and the son, Otto, became the ambassador from Canada to the Czech Republic and served in that capacity until about 3 years ago. They're still alive, but I mean, so it's in a lot of ways it's an exciting family. But Sparkling Ice was to think of it as being, you know, people waltzing on the ice and enjoying themselves. And so this one was written specifically for that. And if I can push the words the right way, we'll get to it here. All right. I think it's that way. Right? Yes.
My heart is breaking.
First one will be fun. And the last one will be from a cantata called The Touch of Christmas, which my friend Wayne Archer wrote the words for. He didn't call it The Touch of Christmas, he called it The Touch of Christmas. And it's the cradle song from that little cantata. So the first thing we're going to do is treat you to an old American folk song, There's a Hole in My Bucket.
We'll fix it.
There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. There's a hole in my bucket, a hole.
Then mended, dear Georgie, dear Georgie, dear Georgie. Then mended, dear Georgie, mended.
With what shall I mend it, my bucket, my bucket? What shall I mend it, my bucket, the mend?
With a straw, dear Georgie, dear Georgie, dear Georgie. With a straw, dear Georgie, a straw.
But the straw is too long, dear Liza, but the straw is too long, dear Liza, too long.
Then cut it, dear Georgie, dear Georgie, dear Georgie. Then cut it, dear Georgie, cut it.
With what shall I cut it, dear Liza, dear Liza? With what shall I cut it, dear Liza? With what?
With a knife, dear Georgie, dear Georgie, dear Georgie. With a knife, dear Georgie, a knife.
But the knife is too dull, dear Liza, dear Liza. But the knife is too dull, dear Liza, the knife.
Then sharpen it, dear Georgie, dear Georgie, dear Georgie. Then sharpen it, dear Georgie, sharpen it.
With what shall I sharpen it, dear Liza, dear Liza? With what shall I sharpen it, dear Liza, the knife?
With a stone, dear Georgie, dear Georgie, dear Georgie. With a stone, dear Georgie, a stone.
But the stone is too rough, dear Liza, dear Liza. But the stone is too rough, dear Liza, the stone.
Then wet it, dear Georgie, dear Georgie, dear Georgie. Then wet it, dear Georgie, wet it.
With what shall I wet it, dear Liza, dear Liza? With what shall I let it, dear Liza, the stone?
With water, dear Georgie, dear Georgie, dear Georgie. With water, dear Georgie, with water.
In what shall I fetch it, dear Liza, dear Liza? With what shall I fetch it, dear Liza, the water?
With a bucket, dear Georgie, dear Georgie, dear Georgie. With a bucket, dear Georgie, a bucket.
But there's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, a hole.
Okay. This, The Touch of Christmas, The Touch of Christmas, I keep saying. This cradle song, I've done it in a lot of different churches over the years. And I've done it with kids, and I've done it with grown-ups, and I've done it with 4-part harmony, and I've done it with 3-part harmony. This was originally written for the Syracuse University Children's Chorus in 1982. We didn't have recordings at that time. They did it on a tape. I think I still have the tape somewhere. I've never been able to get any of this stuff published, but I still have fun performing it. So, and this one is a precious thing, and this is the time of year when we start thinking of this. After all, Sunday will be the first Sunday in Advent, so we're coming toward the Christmas season.
Yeah.
And this fits. So they will sing it, and then we're going to sing it a second time. You've got the words there. See if you can kind of try joining in. No, maybe you will be able to. I don't know.
Sleep softly, Lord Jesus, the manger is cozy and warm. The walls of the stable around you will shield you from harm. A star wakes in Bethlehem night, and a small white donkey softly nibbles your pillow of hay.
Let's try it again, kids, and we'll get it right.
Sleep softly, dear Jesus, the manger is cozy and warm. The walls of the stable around you still shield you from harm. A star makes the Bethlehem night a brilliant day, and a small white donkey softly nibbles your pillow of hay.
And that's all she wrote, folks. Thank you. Join us for some refreshments, and you can meet with us in there. We